Thank you. Get hype, everybody, because it is time. It's the final day of the Golden Pizza Awards 2014, and we've got some big categories today. Starting off with something a lot of people tend to take for granted in this medium for whatever reason. You hear it all the time. A game doesn't need a good story to be good, and there is some merit to that thought, but it doesn't mean that there can't be a good one regardless, that it doesn't help in certain situations. I mean, a lot of video games are smart enough to tell a story strictly through their mechanics. No words, no dialogue, because it doesn't need those things. We have something better. We can let the player craft their own story. We can let them create their own narrative, talk about their own things, and given the right tools, experience something amazing in a way that no other medium could possibly present it. And that's why we're here to talk about those people today that achieved that incredible goal. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the award for Best Story.
Best Story. Wolfenstein: The New Order. Do you know why people loved old action movies? It's because no matter how ridiculous things got, no matter how absurdly high the stakes got raised, it still managed to make us get wrapped up in everything that was happening anyway because the characters were so unbelievably lovable. And that's this game in a nutshell. It should have been impossible for the New Order to have a compelling narrative. This is a game that features Hitler death robots and Nazis on the moon. And yet, the cast and their dialogue is written so incredibly well that we roll with it regardless. This game's story is a contradictory miracle, which, if we're being totally honest, fits a Wolfenstein game perfectly. Shadowrun: Dragonfall. When you speak to an audience, you're very careful not to use generalizing phrases like, "This is everything we like about cyberpunk." So, allow me to be a bit more specific. This is a gritty yet vibrant and colorful world filled with extremely well-written characters that are easy to relate to, a mythos that sets up a grand adventure of mystery and intrigue, spurred on by your ragtag group being in the wrong place at the wrong time, and overcome by a combination of shady accomplices, ancient magic, and a metric boatload of elite hacking skills. You'll forge bonds, choose to persuade through either the power of your words or the accuracy of your gun, and may even choose to sacrifice your humanity to ensure the job gets done, despite the examples of what happens to those who follow that path all around you. So, yeah, it's everything we like about cyberpunk. Professor Layton versus Phoenix Wright. If you're bringing together two characters who have made their names and spurred the creation of intensely passionate fan bases off of being charismatic, brilliant, and inquisitive minds, every single thing you pen for their meeting better be written in 24-karat ink. And the narrative in Professor Layton vs. Phoenix Wright is nothing less than solid gold. This is not only one of the most intriguing and brilliantly paced stories these two have ever gone on, it's also one of the darkest, raising the stakes for what is sure to be one of the greatest challenges they've ever had to face. This is a crossover that more than justifies its existence, and does it by giving fans exactly what they've loved these series for in the first place. Divinity: Original Sin. Interactivity is the most precious aspect of games because it gives us volition. Without a player, a game is an incomplete work of art, waiting for someone to come along and craft an experience with the digital brushes some developers spent the last few years creating. Few games we played recently encapsulate that mentality more than Divinity: Original Sin. Talk to any two people who played this game about certain parts of the narrative, and you will get radically different tales of how events played out, directly leading to even wilder variations of scenario down the road. This is an RPG that gives you almost 100% control in telling a story exactly the way you want to, leading to some of the most profoundly satisfying stories you'll see in any game this year. Valiant Hearts: The Great War. Sometimes reality is much more powerful than fiction. To reflect on what we've been willing to do to each other in real life trumps almost anything we could randomly pull from our imaginations, and being forced to face it, especially in a format like video games, can be extremely moving. This is a game where everything tells a story, from the stylized way the characters and environments are drawn and even animated, to the haunting musical score and supreme sound design, filling your ears with sirens, explosions, and the despaired weeping of families pondering the fate of their loved ones. It all helps achieve the goal of reminding us that there are some places we as a species never want to return again. Human beings have been telling each other stories since the dawn of time. We pass on a bit of who we are and what we wish to impart upon the world by sharing tales with each other. Now, it'd be more than a little conceited to say that we've revolutionized the process by making it interactive, but certainly we've at least added an interesting wrinkle to the process. We've opened the doors for stories that could only be told on an individual basis, to craft the tools necessary for someone to go on an adventure just as personal and meaningful as anything you could find in a book or movie where you're only a passive observer, and maybe even have an advantage on that personal part. To craft a truly good video game narrative is to have an intricate understanding of how this medium works. So the only question is, who was working the hardest? And the winner is...
To my dearest friends, through the evil noise of artillery, tanks, and planes, I remember our adventures.
Valiant Hearts, The Great War. To live through history is to understand it in a way that mere words or pictures could never impart, and World War I is one of the most important events in our history. This is a war that broke empires and shattered the entire political landscape. It pulled us screaming into a new era, teeming with terrifying new ideas. Without it, there is no Hitler, no Stalin, and no conflict in the Middle East. It is the seminal catastrophe of the 20th century. And Valiant Hearts makes you live through it all. We must not forget what happened during this time, nor how we can avoid the same thing happening to us. But most importantly, we must never forget how it affected each and every human being during that time on an individual level. And the way this game is set up, it will remind you wholeheartedly.
This next category is something not a whole lot of people talk about, at least not as much as I think they should be. Strategy games are incredible if you want to feel like a commander, somebody who has got a lot of weight put on their shoulders, who is making the calls for every single unit in an entire army, or maybe just a small ragtag group of people who have come together to fight for a common cause. Whatever your reason, whatever your goals, whatever your ideals or strengths, and whatever choices you make, you're gonna have to live with them because every move in this genre is important. This is the award for Best Strategy.
Best Strategy. Civilization Beyond Earth. Beyond Earth is a different breed of civilization. The tech web branches and splits in ways that allow a lot more reactionary freedom when you're presented with tough situations. The alien races populating the landscape provide much stiffer resistance than the barbarians of the past, crafting their own characteristic identity and gameplay quirks. And then there are the affinities, which allow you to completely change the entire course of your playstyle, augmented by the clever quests which give a lot of context and meaning behind what you're doing. Whether you love or hate these new features, one thing is for certain: this is not the same game as before. Transistor. Playing what could otherwise be a standard action game step by step is an addictingly refreshing take for players who feed on efficiency. Any earned ability can be used actively, passively, or as a buff to change and augment the properties of any other skill, encouraging experimentation and development towards your own unique style of turn-by-turn domination. And for those who find the game too easy, there are always the many limiters available, which make enemies even tougher in exchange for boosts to experience gain. The Banner Saga. Like the world it inhabits, this game is cold, unforgiving, and brutal. You'll have to make many choices over the course of your journey, and more often than not, you will make the wrong ones. But combat is where things really start to speed up in that department. You and your enemies only hit as hard as the health you have left, forcing you to make even more tough choices about whether to strike at the heart or weaken their armor to make subsequent attacks more devastating. Every single move is important in the Banner Saga. just like it should be in any good strategy game. This War of Mine. A war game where you play as a citizen caught in the middle, this War of Mine chronicles a bleak and hopeless crusade, not to conquer your enemies or win glory on the fields of battle, but merely to live another day. You'll struggle to keep tensions low, protect what's yours from the less desirables all around you, and have to watch as your residents go insane as they have to do unspeakable things for table scraps. This is not a game you play, it is a game you merely survive. And it is so much more compelling for it. A good strategy game imparts a certain sense of responsibility, placing the weight of not only victory, but of general survival on your shoulders. You feel the weight and consequences of every single decision you make, be they good or bad, and because of that, when a play works out exactly the way you planned and you come out miles ahead of your adversaries because of it, the sense of satisfaction is enormous. They are games of pure tactical skill with unflinching difficulty and surprisingly deep mechanics to match, and we love them for it. So which game stretched our skills the farthest? And the winner is... Transistor! Transistor is a game of meaningful choice. The setting and augmentation of every ability in your hotbar will drastically change your approach to combat. Every enemy is a unique obstacle that will test and challenge your strategies in often surprising ways. And even if you're not interested in making the game harder, the passive experience gain of the limiters is ceaselessly tempting, forcing you to weigh your long-term goal of beating the game versus your short-term goal of staying alive. It's certainly a far cry from the traditional easy, medium, and hard settings, and far more intuitive to boot. No other game this year allowed for strategy this elegant and simple, yet ceaselessly brilliant and intuitive. And that's why it is the best strategy game of 2014.
This is it. It's all come down to this. All the awards, all the categories, all the games you might not have tried, this giant party, this appreciation we've shown for everything that came out in 2014 over the past 7 days has all boiled down to this. The Game of the Year. The one title that deserves to have people look back on it for this year and say, yeah, that's where 2014 was at. That is what defined this year. That is what made everything about this era of gaming awesome. This is the game that stood above everyone else, which is no mean feat, by the way. Hundreds of games came out this year, as they do every year. So why not honor them here today? I'm not going to take away from any games you might have enjoyed this year, but in our personal opinion, this was the most fun we had. Ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together for this year's Game of the Year.
Game of the Year. Bayonetta 2. This is the best game Platinum has ever made, hands down. It is the culmination of everything they're about. Gigantic set pieces, entertaining characters with even more entertaining weapons, larger-than-life bosses, and absolutely spotless controls. I've said it before and I'll say it again. This game is so damn good it gives me a headache. It demands my attention so strongly that I'm willing to trade being more efficient at it for my body's basic need to blink. It is pure bombastic energy, and one of those games you have to play yourself to truly understand how good it is. Super Smash Bros. For Wii U. Let's be honest with ourselves here. Nintendo could easily release a new Smash Bros. Every year, and we would probably buy it. But the fact that they are so committed to polishing and refining their ideas into something like this is a policy all of us should come to respect. It's bigger, it's badder, it's in HD, and it has every feature you could ever conceivably want, including working online. Yes! There is no reason not to own Smash Bros. If you have a Wii U, because it is the kind of game that entire console purchases are made on. Shadow of Mordor. How do you play Shadow of Mordor? Do you amass a posse of your own and conquer the orcs by sheer numbers? Do you work from the shadows and manipulate the landscape through clever positioning and pinpoint strikes? Do you charge in, sword drawn, with absolute faith in your skill? And how do your strategies change in response to a plan going right or wrong? If you're looking for a dynamic, engaging experience in Shadow of Mordor, all of these choices are correct, because they all lead to it becoming a more interesting game, shaped by your every move and built around your own playstyle. This is a game that grows with you as you grow with it, and I'm sure you've realized by now that that's what games are all about. Destiny. Wait, come back. Hear me out. I want you to remember that these are our awards, and that they're based on the experiences we've had. And we, as a company, are almost ashamed to admit how many countless hours we've dumped into Destiny. The amount of time we've collectively spent hunting legendary engrams and comparing boss strategies is downright staggering, and we've enjoyed every second of it thanks to an awesome community and developers that actually have a sense of humor, even in regards to their failures. Destiny is a game that keeps on giving, and you can bet we'll be playing this well into the new year. Transistor. I feel like I've been mentioning this game every single episode, but the more we play it, the more we keep finding things to like about it. 4 nominations and 2 awards, and that's not to downplay the amazing work it did in categories we didn't even hold awards for, like voice acting, animation, and sound design. The aesthetic kicks ass, the setting kicks ass, the music kicks ass. Transistor just kicks ass. And I've spent more than enough time by now explaining the 1.5 billion reasons why. Looking back on this year, it's really easy to get focused on everything that went wrong. It's really easy to just think that 2014 will be remembered as the year where everything let us down, where launch disasters were a dime a dozen, and companies collectively tarnished this industry's reputation. But that's not what the Golden Slices are about. Our job is to highlight the fact that no year is truly bad, that even amongst controversy, horrible mistakes, and great losses, that unbelievably good things still happened. Going into the new year, pinpoint the games you'll be playing for months yet, that you'd never consider trading away, and that will become an inseparable part of the reasons why you love video games in the first place. Take this year's winner, for example. To win the Game of the Year is to overcome all that good, to make something so unbelievably flawless that it trumps the collective efforts of every other developer in the world that is equally as or even more passionate and devoted than you. Only a handful of games come out every 12 months that can make those kinds of claims, but rarer still is a game that redefines standards, that is not only the best game of its type over the past year, but the best game of its genre ever made. This year's winner set the bar that every other game of its type will be judged by from this point on, which is why it easily deserves to have the award. And the Golden Slice for Team Pizza's Game of the Year 2014 goes to... Bayonetta 2! Bayonetta 2 is the greatest action game in existence. When there comes a day that a better game than it is made, number 1, it'll probably be made by Platinum, and number 2, it will probably be called Bayonetta 3. I want to hug the executive at Nintendo that decided to help make this game a reality. I want to shake hands with the geniuses at Platinum that designed this battle system and made it so unbelievably satisfying to be a part of. I want to have extended talks with the graphic designers to figure out what inspirations led them to creating such larger-than-life challenges, such scenarios and characters, because I know that kind of knowledge would make anything we as developers ourselves build in the future that much more amazing. You have created something to aspire to, Platinum, and for that, we present you the Game of the Year Award for 2014.
Give it up for Bayonetta 2, everybody, and give it up for everyone who was even nominated today. Like I said, hundreds of video games come out every year, thousands of people more who are achieving their dreams every day of working together to make this medium better, including us making a game of our own right now. I just want to extend a big round of applause to everybody out there who is working to make video games regarded as an artistic medium, who are working to just make their games happen, to tell stories unique to them, and to create experiences that may be standing here on the podium next year. And to those people, I tip my invisible hat to you. I'll see you again next year, everybody, but until then, I'm Whatthefnu, and remember to stay awesome. Happy 2015, everybody!